naturally when you don't have a lived experience, right? Like I don't have a lived experience of being a woman, so I cannot comprehend the conversations around pregnancy, the conversations around menstruation and things like that. So I can only fathom and understand based on what they're telling me, right? And it's natural for someone to not comprehend what is LGBTQI plus just like that, right? Because you don't have that lived experience. And the first step towards that is coming down here and trying to listen to my journey or journeys of people like me. And there's this common question I used to get long ago, and I still get sometimes, is how did you know? Right? Like how did you figure out that you're gay? I wish I had a superpower like that. but it's the same time as anybody else would know their sexuality or their identity, so to speak, not just sexuality, right? I still remember like and this is a very natural question I used to get, and I once actually sat down and I was like, I need to just go back my memory lane today and I need to figure out what was that one moment where I clicked and I was like, yes, I like guys, but right. So I think as long as I can go back in my memory lane, it was those those days when I was kid, and I still remember that you're a kid and you're in school and there are these friends who tease you if you sit next to a girl, right? And they'll just come to you and say, hey, you're sitting next to a girl, what is this? Very casual, right? And for a straight person, that feels very elated feeling, like, yeah, this sounds good. Yeah, I sat next to a girl or I sat next to a guy, and there's this shy feeling you'll have, like a kid would experience. I never experienced that, and I used to be very close to a lot of girls in my class. And I used to sit with them, talk to them, play with them, everything was normal. But when I used to sit with a guy, and I used to share a pencil, rubber, I used to feel this tingling sensation in my tummy. I was like, something sweet is happening with me. And I just passed it. I was like, this could be a regular thing. And then as I grew up, I realized that, okay, there's this narrative that is happening that I have to like this girl or this gender, but I don't feel that attraction naturally. I feel like she's a very good friend of me. I would love to play with her, walk with her home. But then that's it. I don't get that butterfly feeling when I look at a girl or a woman that way, right? And that was a confusion I started growing up with when I was in my teenagers. And sadly, thanks to media and a lot of social references back then, was not at all supportive of LGBTQ, right? For a very fact, the term queer means weird in English dictionary, right? And that was a slur used against the community, saying you are queer, that means you are weird, you are not normal, right? But then the term is now embraced by the community and said, you call us queer, we will own the world. So we are queer and we are proud of it, right? But then when I was growing, I still remember these references to actors and comment in a comical way, right? And that fed me in my mind that, okay, if I have to associate myself with this person right now, then I'll be a joke all my life, which I don't want to be. And already I was trying to get picked on by the bullies of the class because they corner people who are vulnerable, right? And I was like, no, I don't want any more attention from these bullies. So I really didn't want to go in that lane. So I started isolating myself. And then there was this observation made by my teachers that after a point, there's this chirpy, happy Harsha suddenly became this silent Harsha who was sitting in the corner just minding his own business and going back. Nobody cared to actually question why is this child suddenly behaving in a very different way. Doesn't show this trajectory of his behavior in the last couple of years, but suddenly there's a change. But that was a change. I was trying to distance myself from people so that I don't come across as queer and then get picked on. Now, cut to a couple of years, and then somehow we all build our own defense mechanism, like alcohol, non-alcoholic person, they have their own way of saying. So I also figured out that, okay, this is just a phase, I need to get through this, and then eventually everything will be hunky-dory and happy. But then little did I know that it is not a phase. I still remember I moved to Hyderabad. I'm a native Bangalorean, and when I joined Microsoft in Hyderabad, I moved there. The first 2 years was too hard for me because I was staying alone, all by myself, and I literally remember uh, almost couple of nights just sitting there and looking at the ceiling every day and just asking myself, why am I like this? I have no answer for that, right? Because the path ahead seems so difficult. The path ahead seems like you need to break a lot of stereotypes. The path ahead seemed like I need to either pretend to be straight and live like that all my life, or I need to start living my life but at a cost of maybe losing my parents, friends, a lot of things. And those 2 years was traumatizing for me. And then I remember I picked up the EAP counselor's number and I called her and I started talking about my issues, my mental health issues, and I was not even touching this topic. I was just telling her that I have anxiety, I basically Googled and figured out a bunch of mental health issues and just started quoting them that I have these issues. But a couple of sessions later, I figured out that, okay, I need to address this part. And I told her that, hey, you know what? I think I like guys, but fix me right now. And I still didn't, want to embrace myself, so to speak. And then that was the first allyship I experienced from someone in my life, that someone saying that this is completely okay. We will fix this. If you want us to fix this, we'll fix that. Because at that point in time, I just needed someone to acknowledge my existence, right? Like someone to say that, yes, whatever you're experiencing, it's completely normal to experience. If you want us to fix this, we can fix it. But let's just talk through this. And it was her way of letting me open up to her. And I spoke to her in length. And there was this one task she gave me after like a couple of weeks, that can you just try acknowledging what you are going through, in front of a mirror. Like you're sick, you have fever. The first thing you do is you go to a doctor and you say, I have fever, I have these symptoms. Very casually. You will not hide and say, I feel something, there's some heat in this part. No, right? Like you just casually go and say, I think I have fever, treat me. So can you just acknowledge your symptoms and to yourself? And it was so difficult for me to look at the mirror and say I'm gay. It was extremely traumatizing for me even to look into my own eyes. And that's when I realized that, okay, this is very deep rooted. There's a lot of phobia within me against the community, against people of LGBTQI+. And then I started addressing those phobia. Classic scientific way of addressing phobia is learning more about it. Simple scientific way of doing, right? Like we have a phobia, we need to just intervene and learn more about it. And I learned more about the queer culture, the LGBTQI+ references, every question which a person who is not aware of LGBTQI+, I had, like, how is this normal? Where is this even coming from? Nobody in my family has experienced this. Lot of things. Is it even natural? Is this even Indian thing? Where have I picked this from? Things like that. And every time I was going through that, I had to just do more research. And there's a lot of information available on the internet, and you will get answers. And thus my journey of self-acceptance started. It took me close to 25 years to come out to myself, I tell. And then I started coming out at work, and that's the best part of coming out at work, because it's the most safest place and the easier bet to take, if you ask me, than coming out to your parents. And then a couple of months later, I came out to my own parents. They had their own journey. And I always tell people that even allies, if you don't get it today, I don't expect, I'll give a very low bar to myself. I don't expect even 30% of you to be an ally today, right? It's a journey, because if it took me 25 years to acknowledge my own self, it takes some time for people to absorb the information, absorb someone else's lived experience, respect that. But like Priyanka said, it all starts from just acknowledging their existence. So I would just invite all of you to not dismiss someone's existence. Like, that is the worst thing to do. You may not accept me, you may not acknowledge my, being gay, which is fine, which is completely fine. But you cannot dismiss the community. They are existing here. And if someone's vocally saying they are gay, then they know that that comes at a cost of discrimination, that comes at a cost of letting down of their own family and friends, that comes at a cost of maybe moving away from their family and friends. That means they are owned up to their identity. So there is no way we can dismiss that individual, right? So I would just call them, my only call to action is admit that people exist. You are not understanding it today, which is completely fine. It takes time. The business prerogative is quite evident. We are, like, I and my community can generate $4.3 trillion economy in the world. So it's an untapped money out there. So let's all run and grab that, right? Like, build more inclusive products for them. But then it's also natural to build for everyone if you have the community in your own workplace, right? Like, there will be someone who would just stand up and say that, hey, this feature is not looking right, or this particular product needs a little bit improvement because it's maybe exclusionary towards the LGBTQ community, things like that. But the importance comes beyond that, is someone's livelihood is also a matter of fact, right? I always believe that you cannot leave your personal life outside that punching machine and enter. You are your whole self, right? Now imagine you have not built a safe space, or a psychological safe space, as they say. It gets even harder for a queer person or an LGBTQ person to work, right? My own example, according to the impact analysis, in the year 2017 and 16, I was an underperformer in my company, right? And that is also because I was in that phase of understanding myself, rediscovering myself and accepting myself. But that's a tax I've paid to acknowledge myself, which I wholeheartedly embrace. But then that was a privilege of me being in a most safe place with people around me acknowledging that this guy is going through something problematic. Let's give him his space to grow and thrive, right? And that is a privilege I carry, and I'm so forever indebted towards Microsoft for that. But the point I was trying to make is the psychological safety aspect. Imagine you're a cisgender heterosexual person and you're married and you have a kid, and the kid has not done homework for the last 3 days. The teacher will gradually call you to the school, yell at you, or like give you a notion of advice that how you should take care of your own child, right? But that's a very irritating experience for you, and that just spoils your probably rest of the day, the mood. You would come to office, you would work, but then you would be able to work in office because you know you can talk about it to your colleagues in a lunch table. You can just sit in a lunch table and say, yeah, today I had to go to my school and then they just gave me a earful, I don't know how to deal with this. You have this opportunity to talk about your personal life. Imagine an LGBTQ person who's closeted, who's probably contemplating how to tell my parents. If I tell my parents, what if they kick me out? And currently, if they've already told their parents and their parents are not accepting them, they're probably emotionally, mentally, physically torturing or being violent to that person. How would they comprehend that situation, come to workplace, perform, create impact, and also laugh and smile and behave as if nothing is happening? The simple analogy I can give you here is, imagine you're wearing 10 layers of coat and walking in a desert. It's the extremely non-conducive way to walk. Now I'm telling you, you cannot just walk. You're in a marathon. You have to finish this 21 miles in next one day. That's even more traumatizing and difficult to do that. And that's exactly what any marginalized community, which is trying to hide a lot of their core identity, because the mainstream or the majoritarian people might not accept them, goes through that pressure of wearing 10 coats. And right now I'm also wearing a coat. I don't know why I decided to do that. But it's hard, it's difficult. So for a workplace, it's important to talk about this, because you cannot dismiss someone's existence, like I said, right? Like I had one of our ex-managers come back and said, hey, how does it matter if you slept with a man or a woman yesterday night, right? And that's a very, in my opinion, that comes from a lot of fear and lack of empathy towards the community, right? Because now you trivialized my whole life my identity to an act of what I did with my partner, which is exactly the same for a heterosexual person as well, right? What they did in their bedroom yesterday shouldn't matter to us. But that's not the point. The point is an LGBTQ person has to fight that identity all the time. We have to constantly keep telling the world that I am a lot of things. I'm a product manager, I run the ERG, I work for Microsoft, I do all of this, and I'm gay. And when I'm gay, I like men. I am attracted towards men. Not trivializing it to the act. I think the conversations around that needs to be changed. The narratives around who you are has to be brought in. And a workplace can act as a beautiful, I call it beautiful place, like a social experiment or a careful, carefully monitored laboratory, if I can call it, right? It's so safe to be who you are here in this wall. I know I will not be attacked. I know I can coach the other person. I know I can walk up to a person and say, hey, your terminology is a little hurting me. Can you change the way you talk? And that person can wholeheartedly learn from it. It's not the normal if I go that and do it in a road, on the roads, right? Like I could be attacked for that. So I think workplace can do a lot in terms of shaping the society, if you ask me, and it starts with talking like this, conversations like this, the policies and all of that helps you build a scaffolding around the community, gives them the safety and security. But if you ask me truly what a queer person would want, is that lunch table conversation. I can sit and tell a bunch of 4 people that I'm not finding a partner, it's so difficult, right? I can't do that. And can I do that the day I'm able to do that without getting judged, without the fear of trivializing my liking towards a guy to an act? I think that is the day I feel all cultures have evolved. I think it's a perfect product to do that. You will attract and retain talent, and for yourself and for your customers if you are able to crack this. And I think the simplest way to do it is creating a culture of inclusion both inside and outside. And I say that with very great respect to what people are doing within the company also, right? Only when you have people talking about the company that it's safe to work here, it is then gets translated to as a brand image. And I have had so many people come back and said that we joined Microsoft even though we had a complete offer because there was an ERG here, because there's a conversation around LGBTQI plus here. And trust me, if you are from a marginalized community, it's very easy for you to know which is a safe space or not. Just the world is small, word of mouth is heavy. So that is one way. Second way I feel is retention part is what I would probably touch upon is the huge responsibility every manager has in any company is immense in shaping the culture of the company, I feel. And I've seen that work at Microsoft as well. Like 7-8 years ago, it was not a place I would come out. It was still a place where there was visible homophobia, lunch table homophobia, where people would talk about pink shirt being gay, short haircut for a girl being tomboy. These are all not terms which are really not cool, right, anymore. But for us to sort of transform that culture, managers are the first line of defense, right? Like for a person who's an individual contributor, for them the culture is always what their manager talks, how their manager treats them, right? You would be having an amazing policy. A lot of your executive leaders are probably visibly supporting, but if I know that my manager is not able to comprehend that I am from queer, or my manager is passing microaggressive statements, that is going to put me back in shell, like probably for a couple of months, right? I think the strong intervention which managers can bring in, just by listening in, just by leaning in. That day when I was not performing well, had I not had a manager who didn't probably understand what I was going through, I wouldn't be probably sitting here. I would have a different trajectory in my life, I guess. But I strongly feel in order to retain the policies and the framework and the structure could be amazing, but if your line of defense is not sensitized, it's going to be difficult for us to scale this effort. So I would probably invite all the managers who are tuned in today, just go back home or to your desks and look up the struggles of LGBTQI person if possible, and that'll just open up your point of view around how to talk to someone if they come out to you, because coming out is deeply personal. I always say that if someone is coming out to you, that is an information only to you. Of course, I've come out to a number of people right now, so it has become a public detail. But if someone's coming out to you in private space, in a one-on-one, it is only for you, and only for you to consume. And the best part is, if they've chosen to come out to you, that means they trust you the most, and that in that moment, right? So the best thing you can do is just listen and be there for them. So I think the last mile culture definition will always be a great talent retainer. I've stuck to a company for 8 long years now. So I think that's the best part of what culture can do. And I also came out to my workplace first. That also says a lot, that the workplace was way more conducive for me to embrace myself, because every coming out is like recharging yourself. Like you're just charging yourself 1% at a time, so that when you come out to your parents, you are like in a very passionate and a healthy way. And that's the ultimate goal for any LGBTQ person. None of it matters after a point. It's my parents' acceptance, and when I got that, I felt like I have everything conquered. So yeah, I think Founded can actually do a lot. Like your product touches a lot of people. This community is definitely untapped in terms of talent. There's dearth. There's amazing set of talent there. There's no dearth there. And when you can build a platform which is inclusive for them, where someone can self-attest themselves, share it confidentially with a recruiter, part of the hiring process, everything is sorted. Like I had one of our employees come back and said that in one of their previous interviews, one of the interviewer asked, "Are you married?" Right? And I was taken aback. I was like, why was this a question in an interview which is not evaluating a person's personal space in terms of marriage or not? And these are the places where I had to go back and intervene and go back and say that, hey, it's normal to ask this question. Trust me, in India, after a point, if you're 25, 26 and you're walking alone everywhere, it is very natural to ask, where is your girlfriend? When are you getting married? And once you get married, where is your kids? And things like that. It's very ingrained in our culture to ask, and it's not nosy, pokey. But then the point is, people who are from the LGBT community cannot afford to get any of that right now. So it's a trigger for us, right? So my only invitation is, if you are having a normal conversation in your own lunch table, just increase the horizon of the conversation. If you know someone's 25, 26, don't assume their sexual orientation based on their gender. That's the simple thing you can do. Just open the horizon and ask, oh, are you dating someone, a boyfriend or a girlfriend? Let them confirm their sexuality if they want. And just by opening it up, you're just making maybe someone who is probably closeted way more comfortable in that space. The first big milestone India covered is Section 377, where we decriminalized it in 2018, September 8th. That was a big step, because up until then, I was probably a criminal in this country. But then there's a lot of nitty-gritty around how the criminality works in that act, but I'm not getting into that. But the point is, I was on paper as a criminal person living. But then at least that is gone. So a lot of us are now equal citizens, at least by the books. But there's a lot more to it, right? Like, imagine you're not gonna think twice if you love someone. You're not gonna think twice on how will you marry them, or you'll probably have a milestone on when will you marry them. But how part is solved, right? Like, there's a religious angle to it, and then there's a registration angle to it, and both of it is covered. There's no questions asked. But almost 10% of this country cannot legally acknowledge their marriage, and that's the case which is currently running, right? None of us who are queer can adopt. None of us who are queer can have a surrogate baby. A lot of us cannot even claim at inheritance at some extent. Like transgender people, their inheritance laws are not created clearly. And a lot of us can get discriminated against physically and emotionally as well. So the queer community is right now fighting for all those basic rights, which is basically given out of the free will of the country by the constitution, but not to all of us. So that's one part. But then that's not even the fact I'm gonna sort of rally around. I feel legal changes are mere, I would say, initiators, if I can, because they're just gonna start some change in the legal proceedings. But the real change is the society, right? And the framework with which society operates. If you ask me if I have a right to marry, I would probably go and marry the person, but I would still not be comfortable walking hand in hand in a supermarket. I would still not be comfortable walking hand in hand in an apartment complex. I don't know if I will have a adopted baby. I don't know how the baby would react in a school setup. I don't know how parents of the other kids react to me and my partner. And these changes take time. These changes take years together, and it needs to be started even way before the law gets progressed, right? So the legality part, I'm sure we have best brains working towards it, and I think there's very limited influence we might have there. But the societal part is where I think we can create a strong change, right? Like my mom, she's 60 almost close to 60 now, and she took time to come to terms with who I am. She took baby steps. She initially started addressing my queer friends as people like you. And then I think somewhere she learned that, okay, that's offensive for my son. Then she started slowly using the word gay. She started using the word lesbian. And that's baby steps. But the day I felt very proud of her is when I introduced her to a friend of mine who is transgender person. She's still going through transition, but she presents herself as male because corporate and her family doesn't accept her yet. And she was visiting me, and my mom not even once misgendered her, because I told my mom her name is XYZ and she is a female. You might see her and she might come across as a male, but treat her like a female. And I didn't have to explain a lot around what is transition, why should you misgender someone, what is dysphoria. There's a lot of theory around it. She just understood that, okay, I need to treat this person equally in my house. I cannot disrespect this person because she's coming to my house. And she spent almost 2-3 hours talking about everything to that friend of mine. Not even once she misgendered. So if a person who is probably not having as much access to internet information and awareness as us can make that small change to feel someone included, I think all of us can do that in some sense or the other. Another instance I want to share is one of our employees was walking back home with one, like a lanyard or a rainbow tag like this. And this was a huge apartment complex in Hyderabad where 3,000 families live. There's this teenager who ran by and told that, "Uncle, I think I'm queer, but I'm very scared to tell my parents, but I like the fact that you're wearing a rainbow lanyard. It makes me feel happy," right? Imagine that growing child who's probably questioning his own existence every day like I did, but feels so comfortable and confident looking at some random uncle wearing a lanyard, right? And that's the positivity we can create on someone's life. That kid now knows that they have someone in the vicinity. If something goes wrong with their family, or if they want to confront or tell people, there's someone in that apartment complex who will understand what that kid is going through. So I would say all of us can create the difference. In our own vicinity, within our own circle. You don't have to come to the roads, walk the activism path, fight for us. None of it is what I'm expecting from anybody here. All I'm expecting is, can you treat people around you equally and with respect? And can you teach people how to be respectful to people of LGBTQ community? I think these are the two simple things I would probably ask us to start doing so that the society at large becomes more better. I've almost done 5 to 6 sessions, touched almost 700 people so far, and I'm just asking them, the task for all of you is talking to 2 people in the next couple of days, weeks, I don't know, I'll not put a timeline, being a product manager. But the point is, can you educate 2 people about LGBTQI plus community, right? And it could be your neighbor, sibling, your maid, anybody talking to them about the event you attended today. And that's the major change you are creating. And if I'm able to touch, hopefully 1,000 people by the end of this month, that's roughly 3,000 people getting educated about LGBTQI community. I think that's a good satisfaction metrics I would run after this month. For people who are thinking of how to come out, or for people who might have siblings, kids from the community, right? I think feel empowered. You have to feel empowered. I know it comes at a cost for a person who's gone through so much, who's probably questioned their identity for a couple of years together. It doesn't come naturally to feel empowered that I am allowed to do this, but trust me, you are. You have an amazing set of leaders who are probably here talking and leading by example. You should all the more feel empowered. And I always tell this, even back at Microsoft, that forget policy, forget everything, right? Like there's this strong sense of belonging which the leadership wants to create, and that's visible. You just latch on to that fact and feel very empowered that even if you feel even a slightest of this uncomfortable moment, you have someone to talk to. And there is no harm in writing an email to even a CEO, if that matter be. But if you feel not comfortable, you can voice out, because you have a strong people who are going to support that. I think that sense of empowerment should come, and I really wish all of you feel that empowered feeling to talk about your whole self here.